Hi guys, welcome to another video, and in today's video we're going to be trying out a technique which I have covered a couple of times in the past, but it's not something I'm particularly comfortable with, and that's ICM, intentional camera movement. And I don't think I've actually ever done a video on ICM at the coast, which seems a bit crazy as I live by the coast, so let's give it a whirl. So, as this is a technique I'm not particularly comfortable with, and I've really only tried a handful of times, I did take the liberty of doing a bit of research, and first of all I asked ChatGPT for a few tips, which, to be honest, probably was quite helpful. A good one being that you should commit a whole shoot to trying it out, and I thought, yeah, that, you know what, that makes sense. So instead of turning up somewhere and just doing a normal landscape shoot and then thinking, right, I'll just try ICM now and see how that pans out. Yeah, I can fully see why, if you commit a whole shoot to it, that actually could be a real benefit to learning the technique. So yeah, that was a good takeaway. But an interesting one, which I had considered but I hadn't really thought about employing, it was that basically I need to concentrate on controlling my shutter speed as opposed to controlling the aperture. Now, as a landscape photographer, 95% of the time I'm controlling the aperture. So yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. Now, of course, to control the shutter speed makes sense, just go into shutter priority. But of course, if it's fairly bright, how am I going to get the sort of long shutter speeds that I require? Well, I think we both know the answer. Right, so the tool of choice for today's shoot is the Olympus OMD EM10 Mark IV. Lovely little camera. I've actually mainly used it for family stuff, but it's a nice little camera, I do enjoy it. But I think it'd be ideal for this sort of situation. First things first, I'm going to make sure that image stabilisation is turned off, because what we don't want is, we don't want image stabilisation trying to stabilise an image that we're trying to make intentionally blurred. You know, it's called intentional camera movement for a reason. So really, if I'm intentionally trying to move the camera, I don't want the camera trying to intentionally sharpen it and unmove it, i.e. unblur it. I hope that made sense. So as I said, walking down here, what I need to do is I need to be able to control the shutter speed of the camera, and I want to ideally be getting into the seconds. I think I want a fairly long shutter speed. I suspect somewhere between 1 to 5 seconds would be quite nice. Now, if I look at it in aperture priority, which I know may sound a bit strange as I'm actually trying to control the shutter speed, but by controlling the aperture, I can effectively select the amount of light coming in or out. So if I'm on a high F number, I'm blocking the most amount of light out possible. If I go into shutter priority, I could just set it for 4 seconds. But if there's too much light coming in, then it will just be overexposed. So by using aperture priority to do it, that's actually a far simpler way of controlling the flow of light. Think about it as turning a tap on and off. So if I go to f22, which is the highest aperture on this lens, that is giving me 40 of a second, which obviously is nothing like what I'm actually looking for. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to try an ND8, which I think is roughly about 3 stops of light it should block out. It's a simple screw-on filter. I paid £25 for a complete set of case screw-on filters. I don't think you can go wrong with that. Tides coming in, not so ideal. No, I don't think that's going to give me the sort of shutter speeds I need. So I'm going to take off the ND8 and I'm going to put an ND64. So that's a 6 times ND filter. Now, if this means I have to open up the lens as wide as possible to the largest aperture, i.e. f5.6 or f4, whatever it may be on this lens, then, you know, so be it. It's not really the end of the world. I think that's the beauty of ICM. I really don't have to worry about technical considerations of everything being as sharp as possible and not having diffraction, because everything's not going to be sharp, and that's the whole point of it. So now I'm getting 1 second at f22. Admittedly, it does seem a bit underexposed. But yeah, that's going to work. That's going to give me something to play with. Now, another thing that ChatGPT suggested, which does actually make perfect sense, is to be intentional with my movements. So here, because I've got a nice horizon line, all I want to do is I'm just going to go for a very simple pan from left to right. I'm going for 1 second at F18, and I'm going to try that. That's actually really working quite nicely. I think I just want to try and get a bit further out that way. For some random reason, only known to myself, I didn't bother bringing my wellies. It's working really nice. It's a very simple scene. There's not much going on to it. It's almost, well, it's just very abstract. But hopefully in that 101 shots I've just taken, one of them will be quite nice. And if it is, here's the shot. So I think that was quite a pleasant little shot, but of course it was a very simple technique. It was just a left to right pan. There really wasn't anything to it. And of course it was just an horizon. So as I say, definitely not up there with the standards of some ICM photos I see, which just look beautiful. That was almost like a toddler with a crayon drawing on a piece of paper, really. So I need to up my game. I think what this shot did prove is that you need to keep images simple. So I suppose my next tip in my mind is keep it simple, stupid. I want nice, simple shapes and form, which will convey nicely into a blur of movement for my final ICM image, which I suspect is not going to be that simple. But I have tried this technique in the past where I've tried it with sort of trees and flowers, and I've been moving around. And with flowers, it works okay because you've got a lot of colour, but with trees and woodland, it can just all get a little bit chaotic. So I think I really do need to keep it simple, and I need to have the colours as contrasting as possible. You know, lots of darks and lights to contrast against each other for it to work. Because ICM is all about movement and it's all about interpretation. It's not about reality. What I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to walk that way towards the waves and see if I can actually move my camera almost following the patterns of the waves and see if we can create something a bit nicer in that way. Can't get used to this zoom lens at all. Right, my aim here is to be quite similar to the last shot, apart from what I want to do is I want to identify a wave coming in. So I'm zooming in on the lens. When a wave comes in, I'm going to pan with it and follow it into the beach. That's the plan. So as you can tell by my movements, it's very unpredictable. I'm trying to follow a wave and panning with it, bringing it in towards the beach. But the results actually really work. They really sort of capture the movement. They more interpret the movement, I think, as opposed to actually capturing it as such. Yeah, again, a nice simple technique. But the results are actually really quite pleasant. I've just been playing with this scene for a little bit. I'm not really convinced it's working, but I was scrolling on Instagram and an ICM photographer on there had left a few tips. One interesting one they shared was to move your camera in the shape of a letter, so an M shape or a J shape or even a Z shape, something like that. And also to start the movement before you actually press the shutter. So that's what I'm trying here, and I don't know if it's working. We're getting something. I think as proved, ICM is going to be a lot of taking a lot of different shots and hoping it works really, but yeah, it's fun. If nothing else, it's definitely fun. Right guys, I'm going to end the video there. I don't think I'm particularly happy with my choice of location, to be honest. But you know, I might be walking away from here feeling all down in the dumps about the shoot, thinking it hasn't gone well, but I might actually get home and find I really like the results. I don't know. I think this is the problem with ICM photography, that perhaps I just have to have a bit more faith, and I have to fully expect that I could be taking hundreds of photos and only getting one shot which works. And I suppose like any time I try a new genre of photography, my confidence improves and my shots get a little bit better, and hopefully over time I'll have more of an idea of what I'm actually doing. But yeah, I hope you've got something from this video. I hope you've picked up a few tips about ICM, even though I am by no means an expert. And as ever, if the only thing you get from this video is you think, oh, I might go out and try ICM, and so I've inspired you to do that, then that's it, job done. That's all we needed, isn't it? Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you soon for another one. Thanks for watching.